This video continues my Movers and Shakers series where I talk about games that enter the collection or leave the collection or change in rating for various reasons. You enjoyed my previous one on Citadels and I thank you for it. Now I'm going to be talking about Cooper Island, which sadly is going to leave my collection. Find out why in this video. Hello, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple, and if this is your first time here, this is a channel about board games and the people who play them. Reviews, top 10s, solo plays, it's a variety of content, and I hope you'll be here to stay. And even though the feature game in this video I'll be getting rid of, it could be one that you want to get for yourself, in which case consider visiting zatu.co.uk and use my code TBMeeple5 to get a 5% discount on an unlimited size basket, and see if you can find yourself a good deal by checking them out. Cooper Island is a very heavy, very unforgiving Euro that was released last year at Essen from Capstone Games. In this game, it's very mechanical and the theme is kind of not really there, to be honest. But what you are doing is that you are building tiles on this little island in front of you in order to gain resources that will allow you to either build boats, build statues, or gain points by various buildings. It's, like I say, not the most thematic game in the world, but the idea is that you have to be very careful at being efficient with the way that you build up your island, what resources you get, because you have limited storage, limited actions, limited rounds, and on top of that you do your actions by a worker placement mechanic where you don't have many spaces, but there's plenty enough players to make life harder for you. You can't get blocked out of a spot, but if you go on top of another player, you've got to pay a resource in order to do so. And believe me, having a spare resource is a tall order for this game. Cooper Island for me started off as an 8 out of 10. It was a solid game at the time. I enjoyed the 3D nature of that island you built, and that was easily my favourite part of the game. The other mechanics were standard Euro mechanics, but worker placement is cool. It was very tense, and you certainly had to pick a strategy and go with it. But over time, that idea of it being very punishing and tight really started to grind a bit. A friend of mine owns this game and chances are I will only play this game with them, therefore if they own it I don't desperately need it myself. But even then I would say my rating has dropped from an 8 to a 6. It's a game I'll play if it's offered on the table, but it's not one that I will probably seek out in favour of all other Euros that I might own, whether here or in the other room. If you're into tight Euro games, like if you're one of those people that thinks Lorenzo and Magnifico is a good game,
Stupid fat hobbit,
then this is probably a game you're going to absolutely adore because it is super tight. You cannot make a mistake in this game. You make one mistake and you could be screwed for the rest of the game because you've only got about 5 or 6 rounds and not that many actions you can do unless you've gotten very lucky with your setup. So any mistakes you make, you're going to feel it hard in the gut. But I don't mind tightness in my Euro games, but there is a limit. I like to be able to make a mistake but still in a way recover or stand a chance of recovering. I've got Vital Lacerda Euros in there, I've got heavy Mind Clash games in there, but I can make a mistake in one of those and still kind of pull myself back and go, well, okay, that didn't work out so well, but if I do this and this, then maybe I can still make up for that lost points that I did earlier. Imagine that you're going over no man's land and you get caught by a stray bullet and it grazes your leg. It's like, limping, that hurt. But I can still pull myself forward, I can still carry on, I can still do this. This is kind of like if somebody took out your leg with a cannonball.
just give us a chance, you son of a
And you are basically on the ground like, uh-oh, this ain't good. It really is that punishing. And over time, I just think with my style of Euros I like to play, if it's punishing, that's okay up to a point, particularly if it's more thematic. But here, this game's not thematic. It's a very mechanical Euro. And this is really punishing and really tight. And I think my taste in games has gone away from that style of Euro. So, the game already dropped to a 7 out of 10 fairly quickly after I'd after I'd reviewed it before. But then now, 6 out of 10 is about as high as I can really give it. I certainly don't think it deserves to go any lower than that because I will still play this game if it's offered, but I do know it's going to be one of those games. It's also not the shortest game either. I mean, you really don't have many actions you do in this game. It's only a 5-round game, or 6 max, I can't remember, but you really don't have a lot of actions you do in this game. So for a game to take 2 to 2.5 hours, possibly longer if you've got a lot of AP players and max player count, wow, you really are sitting there for a long time at the table, not actually doing a lot. And with one of those actions going wrong, as I said, it's going to cripple you for the rest of the game, and that's just not as enjoyable for me as it may be for others. But a 6 still means that I'll play it, and there are good aspects to this. I was particularly impressed with the way that the rulebook for what is a heavy Euro is one of the best rulebooks I've ever read in terms of learning these complex rules. Granted, it doesn't exactly hold your hand telling you how to play the game, but with the variety of actions you do and what the effects do, I've rarely seen a better rulebook for explaining fairly complex rules. So credit has to go to Capstone Games for really doing a good job here. Aesthetically, it's not too bad either. It's not going to win any awards, but it's cool to have that little 3D island tile setup, and that was easily my favourite part of the game. Unfortunately, that only works so well up to a point. I mean, if I want to build a 3D island in some respect, there's probably a bunch of shorter, lighter games I can do that with without having to get punched in the face or have my leg taken off in order to oh well, I messed up. So you're going to win probably. I'm just going to go through the motions and carry on. I don't necessarily have to win a game. I don't think winning is ever important. I've said this a million times, but I still like to feel I have a chance. So with my taste in games changing, with those points I mentioned before, and the fact that my friend already owns it, Cooper Island is now sadly going to leave my collection. Hopefully it will go to someone who enjoys it more than I do, in which case, fantastic. That's the great thing about selling these games on. It may not be my favourite game ever, but for someone else it could be their holy grail of Euro games. And what it does do is means that Capstone Games have got to hold on with Maracaibo in my collection, because if that one fails, then Board and Dice will basically inherit that whole square for themselves. But again, I think Maracaibo is likely to stay for a bit longer at this rate. So Cooper Island, a decent Euro, just not one that's going to get picked in favour of a lot of other Euros in my collection. An 8 down to a 6. Still one I'll play, but just not one that I'm going to be desperate to seek out, and if I never play it again, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So that's it for me on this Movers and Shakers episode. If you like what you see and have earned your subscription, hit the avatar in the centre to subscribe and check that bell for notifications, because YouTube can be dumb sometimes. Until next time, you can check out my recent content or a suggested video by myself. Remember, as always, it's only a game.